Start webinar, start. Hi, everybody. Welcome. We're going to give this just a couple more seconds. I'm letting people into the room here, so bear with me, and we'll start very shortly. All right, Maggie, let's get this thing started right on time. Welcome, everybody. This is the final session of the Money Matters series for 2022. So Maggie and I have been doing this with two of our partners who are not here tonight, but we're very excited to be with you. I am Andrea Krupp. I'm the director of the estate planning department at Providence College, and I'm an attorney by training, but I'm now working in development for PC, and I love it. Maggie is class of 2010, right, Max?
Yes.
And she is the managing partner of John Doe Wealth Management, which is a huge achievement for someone so young and a woman, and just she's amazing. So you'll learn a lot from her tonight. Please feel free to send us questions in the chat feature, in the Q&A feature, and we will try and get to them either as we go through or certainly at the end. But this is interactive as much as we can make it on Zoom. Maggie's got a lot that we're going to share with you tonight. So let's get started. And Maggie, I think the first thing that I want to talk about, this series was developed in honor of the 50th year of having women on campus at Providence College. And so the focus really is women and finance. And I think as a woman, I've been in situations where I've been afraid to ask a question that I thought was silly, something I thought maybe I should have already known by my age. And so I didn't ask the questions. And so I guess what I want to ask you is your opinion on, why is it important for women to understand finance, to understand the basics, and then to learn a little bit more, to not be afraid to ask questions? Why are we here? Why is this topic something that you and I feel pretty passionate about?
Yeah. And Andrea, I have to say, thank you for sharing that such a smart woman who's an attorney has been nervous to ask those questions. I have to tell you, I hear that every day in my job as a financial advisor. I have a very bright professional person, that especially women, because we're a women-owned and operated firm. So we have a lot of women that work with us for that reason. And they come and say exactly that. I know I should know this, or I feel so silly about that I don't know this. And I always say, first of all, always ask the questions. And second of all, don't feel silly. I hire an attorney for my legal documents. I hire an accountant to do my accounting work, even though I am a numbers person, and I hire a painter, just got a quote today for my new fence. I'm not going to spend my time doing that. So we all have our expertise, and finance just happens to be mine. Personal finance happens to be mine. And so there's no reason that you should know all this. So please do ask questions throughout tonight and moving forward. But why it's so important as a woman to understand finances is really about three kind of points. The first is that women live longer on average. The second is that women tend to earn less. We all kind of know that statistic. And last is that women tend to often leave the workforce to be caregivers. So to elaborate a little bit on all that, why is living longer important for finance? Well, in the US, the average life expectancy for a woman is 81 years old, and for men, it's 76 years old, according to the CDC. And so you have to consider longevity whenever you're planning for finances. Why? Because one, you're living longer, so you need more money to spend. And two, healthcare costs. Likely many women are not going to have a spouse to care for them. So they have to think about things such as, who's going to take care of me when I'm 85? And how am I going to pay for that? And long-term care, which includes nursing homes, is expensive. So today, according to Genworth Financial, the insurance group, which does a lot of long-term care work, the national average cost for long-term care, this was 2 years ago in 2022, was nursing home was about $255 a day. If you wanted a semi-private room, it's almost $8,000 a month. If you want, excuse me, I said that wrong. So nursing home, it's about $8,000 a month. If you want a semi-private room, it's about $8,800 per month. So it's expensive, needless to say. So we have to think about that. Also, because we're living longer, we are set to inherit a large sum of the US net worth, or inherit a lot of money. So we are set to inherit about $30 trillion that are going to be passed down from baby boomers. And that's according to investedpedia.org. So think about it. That's a lot of millions of dollars that every woman is set to inherit. And you got to know what to do with that, right? It's very empowering.
I'm going to stop you right there because I just see that our partner in crime has also joined us.
Oh,
Kathleen
hi.
Entwistle, hello, welcome.
Sorry, the link I got was not the panelist link, so I was on the other one watching you guys talk, and I'm like, I'm here. I sent you a Q&A about 10 minutes ago, though, about that. So
that's fine. So Kathy is managing director at Entwistle Partners, which is part of Morgan Stanley. And she has been with us for a long time, in all of these events, and just love having you here. And so we're just starting briefly right now.
You didn't miss anything.
Don't
worry. I don't know anything. Great. I love what you're saying, and I'm so on board with you. Like with not only all of these statistics about like women outliving men, or we're going to be divorced or widowed and on our own. Nobody wants to ask their children to take care of them anymore. That whole sort of way of living is gone by the wayside, with people moving away from their families and not wanting to put that burden on our children. Mm-hmm. But also say, like, the majority of the people on the call, based on the sort of census of age and all, it's a lot of young women. And the other statistic that I know you probably were just about to share is that we found through studies at with Women in Money is even millennial women are giving away their decision-making power when it comes to the bigger picture financial decisions. And they're taking care of just the day-to-day, but not the big picture one. So at the end of this call tonight, my hope and all of our hope is that you guys will take charge of your own financial future.
Love that. And you know what, Kathy, I think part of what I wanted to, the point I also wanted to make is that we aren't assuming that everyone's going to get married or everyone's going to have a partner.
Right.
You can live very happily on your own, whether whether you are single or married or in a partnership or whatever life choices you make. You need to have that confidence that where your money is. You earn that money. You put your blood, sweat, and tears into whatever job you have, wherever your money comes from. You are in control of it and you understand it. Then you can make a choice to hand over that decision to someone else, or to make certain financial decisions as you want to. So I think the three of us are really want to empower you, whoever's on the call, to make your own decisions. And that goes for men too, right? We just, whoever you are, and it's a really great feeling to know that you can take care of yourself financially, and then all the other things that life throws at you, you handle those too. But so that's a great start, and I think that's where we're coming from tonight, right?
Yeah, and I think a really good point that Kathy makes is most women do handle the day-to-day, meaning the budgeting, paying off bills, paying off credit cards. So frankly, that stuff is less interesting to me. So the investing part is so much more interesting. And so if you're capable of doing that, trust me, you're capable of investing. Trust me. So
Kathy, when we're talking about all of these big issues that are going to come up, let's start at the basic level for a minute. Let's talk about, how do you make sure that you understand where your money needs to go, and how to, before we even get to the investment parts about making your money work for you. And Maggie, I don't know whichever one of you wants to take this, but how do you, what do you do with a budget? And it may look a little different when you first come out of college versus when you're 10 years out, but does that one budget fit you for the rest of your life? How do you work with it? What do you do? What are the concepts, and are those static?
Yeah, I can jump in, and then Maggie, you just jump right into. But I would say there's some basic financial steps that you should take right from the beginning. So one thing, if you're young, you have two very important things on your side. One is time, and one is the value of compound interest, which just lets you grow your money better and faster because you're making money on the money that you put in plus the money that you're making. So it compounds. So one is know that time is on your side and start when you're young. And we can give you a zillion examples of how much money you'll make if you start putting a little bit of money away now. Two is set your habits. I'm sure everybody's heard about the book Atomic Habits and James Cleary. And it's all about making little habits that add up to big outcomes. So paying yourself first, whether it's by taking money out of your paycheck and putting it into your 401k or your 403b, or setting aside money for emergencies and for investing. So putting money into your retirement account, it doesn't ever hit your bank account. It doesn't hurt. You don't miss it. The other two ones are a little bit harder, but as soon as your money hits, before you go out for the weekend with your friends or do anything else, just take a little bit of that money and put it into an account called emergency fund, and start building up for unforeseen events. You lose your job. A lot of people lost their job in COVID, or something happens where your car breaks down and all of a sudden you need some expensive gadget to go into your car. So have that. And then also the investing part. If you dollar cost average into the market, we've seen I don't know if you guys pay attention to what's been going on in the market, but we see a lot of volatility in the last 6 weeks or so, a lot of ups and downs. And we might have that for a while longer. And the benefit of dollar cost averaging is you put the same amount in every week or every month, and it doesn't matter if the markets are up or down, you're just putting it in over and over again. So those are some of the tips, and I'm sure Maggie has some too to jump in and add to.
Sure. So to kind of, my tips are very similar to yours. So to kind of expound on them, I have just some visuals because I'm a visual learner. So one thing I like to suggest for budgeting is called a zero-based budget. And so let me know if you can't see my screen. But one, you basically take your income and you take your expenses, and you want to make sure that the end amount is zero. And you might think to yourself, that's really weird. Why would I want it to be zero? But it's because you're giving every dollar a purpose. So you're going to say, hey, I know that I want to take $10 or $50 every paycheck. And as Kathy said, immediately have that just go into my savings account. You can actually go to your employer and set up direct deposit, and you can set a direct deposit up to multiple accounts. So you can say, I want, 10% of my savings going directly to my 401k. I want 10% going into my savings account. And I want, 10% going into my vacation fund or my down payment fund. And then whatever ends up in your checking account is all you can use. And it is proven that if the money's in your checking account, you're more likely to use it than if it's not. So as I mentioned, you'll allocate all of your money to your expenses, to your savings, to your debt payments before your paycheck even hits the account. And you can either repeat expense categories every month. So, rent's due every month and, savings are due every month, but some might be more variable. And so if you come under budget in one category at the end of the month, you might want to add it to another category. So the good news is there are apps that do this for you. I'm not affiliated with any of these. No one on the call is, but my clients have liked using them. So I'm going to share. The one that I think works really, really nicely is You Need a Budget, YNAB. And so basically it connects to your bank account and will allow you to create all those categories for the next month, right? You want to do it looking forward, not backwards, because you've already spent the money if you're looking backwards. Mint is a nice way to just track your expenses, and the Good Budget is a good way to do it. It's like You Need a Budget, but it's good if you have a partner. So like if you're living with somebody or you get married, it's a good resource if you have a partner. So that's a great place to start in terms of budgeting. And I think the second thing that Kathy mentioned that's so powerful is compounding interest. So again, I have a little slide to show you why that is so powerful. So again, I will share my screen. So Albert Einstein actually quoted that compounding interest is the most powerful force in the universe, which was very interesting to hear him say that. And that's really true when it comes to saving for your future needs, whether it's retirement or a longer term kind of a savings goal. Like maybe you won't know you want to buy property in 6 years. And it can really make a big difference. So you can kind of see here, I'm just going to pick on you, Andrea. What if you started saving $5,000 a year for retirement when you were 25 years old? If you continued at the savings rate, assuming you retired at 65, and you assumed a 6% annual return, hypothetically, you would have $820,000 by doing that. If you just saved this money, in a normal, or if you saved your money in a normal retirement account, you would not have nearly as much money. And then on the left, you could see the one that's 419,000. If you had just saved $5,000 a year, so you're saving the same amount, but you're starting 10 years later, and again, assuming a 6% return, you can see that you'd only have half the amount of money. So time is on your side, as Kathy said. The sooner and the earlier you start, the more time you have to have compounding interest work for you.
Maggie, I love those visuals. They get me every time. Kathy, so I think this is a nice segue. We talked about 401k and 403b, and Maggie just showed us, if we start putting money into investments that do have a rate of return that's significant. We know putting it into a savings account today is not going to give us a 6% rate of return. So people, might be starting out and they have a 401k or a 403b through their work, but what about an IRA or a Roth IRA? Can you give just a little example of what those, tell us what those are, what's the difference between the two, and is that something that we should be looking at? How do you even talk about it?
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to do that. So I just want to add on the 401k, 403b, whenever you have an employer that sponsors a retirement plan for you, you have to check and see if they have a match. Because if they have a match, it's free money. It's a 100% return to you. So you want to make sure that you're contributing enough to get the full match from your company. So I'd say make sure you do that first. That's a big win. If you don't have a 403b or 401k at your company, a lot of us are working at startups, and there's lots of companies out there that don't have the same benefits. If that's the case for you, or if you talk to your CPA and you still qualify to do an individual retirement account, you can do that as well. I'm going to focus right now just on the difference between IRA and Roth. And again, the younger you are, the more beneficial a Roth IRA is. So if you're younger, just remember Roth IRA is the way to go first if you have a choice. So a traditional IRA has been around for a long time, and IRA stands for Individual Retirement Account. So it's an account that you can set up as an individual, one person per account. If you have a significant other, you can't mingle it. It's your IRA just in your name. Okay, so the money that you put in an IRA goes in before tax. So for an example, if you were earning a really nice income of $100,000 a year and you put in $6,000 into your IRA, and the amount changes every year typically of what you can do, but I believe that 6,000 is the current amount that you can add. And if you put that money in your IRA, your $100,000 salary, you subtract the 6,000 and you're at $94,000, and that is what gets taxed. So you don't get taxed on that $6,000 that year. It goes in the IRA. The IRA, think of it as a structure or like a house where it's protecting your money from the government taking any taxes out. So you can grow it and defer taxes for a really long time. And you can have any type of investment, almost any type of investment in an IRA, stocks, bonds, mutual funds, ETFs, all sorts of investments. When you get older, you can start taking the money out. If you do it before you're 59 and a half, you will get a 10% penalty, and you will also get your regular taxes. So today's highest tax rate is 37% federally. You'd get the 37%. Whatever your state is, add that to the number plus the 10% penalty. So you're starting off with almost half of it going to taxes or penalties, and maybe more if you're in a state that has a high tax rate. So it's a discouraging factor. We don't want you to take money out of your IRA before you retire. The government, however, wants the taxes back from you at some point in your life. So at 72, they make you take the money out a little bit at a time, and they charge you taxes for it. And that's when you pay the taxes. So it goes in pre-tax, it grows tax deferred, and it comes out, it gets taxed. Now, on the opposite side, if you do a Roth IRA, you put after-tax money in, it's already been taxed. So if you had a $100,000 salary and you put $6,000 into your Roth IRA, the government will tax you that year on $100,000. There's no tax savings in the year that you put the money into the Roth IRA, but it is magic, pure magic for you if you have a long runway. Because what will happen is you put it in the Roth IRA, you invest it, it grows tax deferred for all of those years. And when you decide to take it out, as long as you wait till after 59 and a half, you will have no taxes whatsoever. So if you take the example that Maggie had given earlier, and you said, I put, $5,000 a year in, and it grew, or for a certain amount of years, if you put that $5,000 in and you have $265,000 or $250,000 at the end of the day, that $250,000 in a traditional IRA, you might end up paying half of that to the government, $125,000, to the government. In a Roth IRA, the entire $250,000 is yours to keep and use however you want. So I hope that explained it. Maggie, please jump in and add anything that you think would be helpful.
I think that was great. In one of our past presentations, we used the little analogy of baking a cake. I think that was yours, actually. It was great. And so if you think of an IRA, a 401k, which will be with a corporation. So if you work for a corporation, you'll get a 401k. If you work at a nonprofit or a school, you might get a 403b. And then if you work for the government, you might get a 457. For your purposes, these are all retirement accounts, and they're basically the baking pan. And then you put all the ingredients into the baking pan, and that is the mutual funds, the stocks, and the bonds. So hopefully that kind of helps give a perspective. A IRA is not an investment product. a mutual fund is an investment product or a stock is. But the IRA, the 401k, the 403b, the 457 are all types of retirement accounts. And they're the house, as you said, or the pan, and then you put the ingredients in. That's the only thing I would add. Otherwise, it was wonderful.
So I remember that baking analogy and all the ingredients. And you were talking about that, Kathleen, if we're going to test my memory here, but was that when we were talking also about mutual funds, and there's a little bit of this and a little.
Yeah, it was asset allocation.
Okay.
Do you want me to do it?
Yeah, so actually I do want you to sort of go into a little bit when you were talking about there could be stocks and bonds and all sorts of things in your IRA. And so can you talk a little bit about what that looks like? You know, what are stocks and bonds, the difference, and how do you, so we've talked about the retirement pieces, but also as young investors and young earners, you know, how do you decide where you want to put some extra income if you want to invest in something that's a little more, has a little more risk, and can be a little more liquid, you know, or I guess available to you before 59 and a half, right?
Just cross two words though, risk and liquid.
Yes, okay, right. So
well, I'll just say this. I actually think that your IRA, your retirement account, is a great place to put your more aggressive investments that are long-term, because we tend not to pay attention as much in terms of panicking when we see the markets go down. We don't necessarily look at our IRAs or 401ks every day. So it helps with the human behavior aspect of it, where we're not like panicking and taking our money out and worrying, because we find that people that leave their money in over the long term do much better. Like that human behavior aspect actually hurts us as investors. So use your IRA to do more of the stock owning companies, whether it's through, there's different ways to own a share of a company. And we can certainly talk about that as well. But that's where I think you can take a little bit more risk, is in your IRA. However, I don't know, Maggie, do you want to jump in about, outside of your IRA? Again, I think it's huge to have the emergency fund that can be liquid. That's the one that you take no risk in your like emergency money. I will tell you in March of 2020, when the markets fell off, the table with COVID, we had clients who had a lot of money in the markets, and their portfolios dropped too, as everything dropped, but they didn't panic. And they didn't panic because they had an emergency fund, because they knew, okay, I have enough money to get me through the next 6 to 12 months, no matter what happens. So as long as I can get through that, I don't have to worry that I have to sell something in my portfolio to live off of, and I'm selling it at some low price. So I think the whole human behavior part of it is really key. And you have to have that safe money, and then you can build out something that has a little bit more longevity, and you want to match up your investment to your time horizon. Okay, sorry, Maggie.
Oh, no, it's fine. I think rule of thumb is you want to start with your emergency fund. So most people encourage you to have 3 to 6 months worth of living expenses. Well, what does that mean? A living expense is things that you cannot live without. So it would be your rent, your utilities, any loan payments that you have to make, like student loans, your car payment, your gas, your food. It does not mean going out to a restaurant, unfortunately. That's not an emergency, right? We could live without that. So if you feel like you can live without it, you don't count it in that number. The elements that you count in that 1 month number, you just tally it up, you add rent, add food, find that number, and then multiply it by 3. And that's your 3-month emergency fund. That is a great goal. Now, for some people, especially if you're living in a city, you're like, wow, that's a lot of money. $15,000. I just graduated. How am I going to find that? Because, rents are expensive in big cities. Yes, that's intimidating. It's going to take you a little bit of time to get there. So first, start small. And most people will say, have $1,000 in your emergency fund. Once you get, and I would say build your emergency fund simultaneously as your retirement fund for all the great reasons Kathy mentioned. And then once you have a good handle on putting money into your retirement fund, start with the employer match. Somebody did put a question about vesting. So What vesting means is that there is a vesting schedule. So ask your employer about it. And it means that you will get your employer match if you stay there for a certain period of time. So a very common one is 4 years. If your employer has given you a match, the first year, you might get 25%. If you leave the company after 1 year, the second year, you might get 50% of what they've given. You see where I'm going with this. And you have to stay 4 years to get 100% of your employer match. That does not mean that you don't get your money. Anything that you put in is yours to take, even if you leave the employer. But once you have, so we want to take advantage of the match. You want to automatically set up your 401k to increase 1% each year. You will not feel it in your paycheck, and it can make all the world's difference. And kind of rule of thumb is try to get eventually 10% of your income into that retirement fund for all of the great reasons Kathy stated. So emergency fund and retirement, you want to build up at the same time. And once you've done that, yes, go and invest outside of that. You could open up an individual brokerage account. You can do that through a Robo-Advisor. So Elvest is one, again, no affiliation, but their marketing really focuses on women. There's other Robo-Advisors there, which is, a algorithm takes your risk tolerance and then invests for you. You can also do it on your own, which means you're picking your own investments. And lastly, you could work with a financial advisor as well. And I kind of think of it, I use my medical analogy. So if you're doing it on your own, that's sort of like WebMD. And I don't mean that facetiously. There are things WebMD helps me with, like I have a headache, I should take Tylenol, right? So you could do it on your own. It just might require a little bit more research and more hands-on. Robo-Advisors is kind of like going to a walk-in clinic. So you are getting a professional or a professional group, but you're not forming a long-term relationship with that person. You might go to a different walk-in clinic or even the same one and get somebody else, but you are getting professional help just on a more hands-off place. And then I would say a financial advisor is a very long-term relationship. So think of it as your primary care physician that you see every single year and speak about more complex medical issues. That's how it is, but with finances. So as your career grows, you probably will need a financial advisor at some point. And you can sometimes start that earlier, depending on the complexity of your scenario, or start with some of the other options.
I think one of the habits that I got into, and somebody told me about this maybe when I first started working, was every time I got a raise, I would put that raise amount would get split between savings and retirement, or I would just put it into the retirement. So I didn't give myself a raise in cash necessarily. I would just try to put that away and live on what I'd been living on the year before. And you don't notice it. Most of us don't get huge raises where, we notice a lot of it in our paycheck, but just each year increasing that amount as your income increases was a helpful tip. And I think really painless at the end of the day.
And I would say, compounding interest works everywhere. So it's not just your 401k where it's working, it is working in that individual brokerage account. And so again, if you have a goal that is 5 years or 6 years down the line, it may make sense for you to invest that money versus just save it in a traditional savings account, which is returning far less than 1% right now.
Yeah. And to Maggie's point too, if you match up, just think about matching it up, like where you're putting your money with the time horizon, and anything that you need short-term, a month, 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, even a year or two, that's going to be short-term liquid, safe money. That's more savings. And anything longer than that is more longevity, and that's more investing. So what women tend to do, we put everything under the mattress in a sense. We want it in the bank, we want it safe, we don't want to take risk. But by not investing, you're actually taking more risk than you realize, because you're losing the value of your safe dollar to things like inflation. And inflation's a big topic over the last 3 or 4 months. We had 7.5% inflation. That means that your dollar that you left in, every dollar you left in the bank became worth 92 cents, 92 and a half cents. So that's no good. You have to make sure your dollar keeps up with inflation and it grows. And the best way to do that is to invest it.
And I think, Kathy, you have a great point, and I have a slide that I think illustrates it. People are afraid to invest, right? So what are they afraid of? So I have this chart, which Oppenheimer created. I can't take credit for that. But basically, you can see there are Time magazine covers at the bottom, and it shows you events that people are afraid of, and are afraid of the market crashing because of these events. So it starts with the Great Depression. It goes through JFK's assassination. It goes through several wars, 9/11, Nixon's impeachment, and of course, the 2008 financial crisis. And the point of this is, yes, at any one of those moments, the black line, which represents one of the ways that we measure the market, the Dow Jones, yes, you could see there were big dips, right? Anytime something scary happened, you could see it there. But what happens over time, I think, is really important. And you can see the green arrow shows that over a longer period of time, the market continues to go up, right? And I'm not guaranteeing a specific return or anything like that. But as you can see, if you have a long time horizon, 10 plus years, the chances of having a positive return are quite high. So these things might seem scary. And I think Kathy already said this earlier in the presentation, that, if you have a long-term time horizon, there's going to be ups and downs. Try not to look at it and just let it ride it out. You only really need to look at these accounts when you need to use them, right? Or leading up to when you need to use them. And for retirement, that's a really long time for most of the people on this call.
So another thing that seems far away for, I think, most of the folks on this call is the idea of an estate plan, right? Something that an estate plan can be as basic as having a will. Most people will know what that is. It's a simple, can be a simple document, can be complex too, depending on your needs. But it's a document that tells people what happens to your assets when you die. And assets might be your car, your bike, your bank account, your 401k. It doesn't have to be huge, right? If you've graduated from college, or you are, in your first job, if you're earning any money and you have a bank account, no matter how small, you have an asset, right? You buy your first house, all of that, that's yours. You own it. It's in your name. It's your asset. And having an estate plan or a will or a trust, depending on what you need, is your next step in creating some financial independence and some security. Because as you work to create your emergency funds and your retirement funds, you are growing your own personal wealth, and you are making choices about where you put those. Right? All of the decisions that Kathy and Maggie have said, I want to put X amount in my retirement fund, I want to put X amount into my emergency fund. Those are decisions you're making. Same thing with taking the power and saying, when I die, if something happened to me, I get hit by a bus, or God forbid that happened tomorrow, or hopefully it happens a long, long time. We have a long, healthy life. But whenever that event happens, somebody has to decide what happens to the money that you've earned and the assets that you've accrued. And you want that person to be you. You want to say, I really don't like my sister. I don't agree with what she does. I don't like her, or she has enough money on her own. I don't need her to get my assets, right? I want it to go to my favorite professor. Your decision. You don't need to explain to anybody. So unless you have an estate plan or a will or a trust, you don't make those decisions. Somebody else will make them. The state will make them. It's mandated by law how certain assets will pass if you die. It's called intestate. It means without a document that tells your survivors where that money goes. So as we talked about having people you trust, having an accountant, maybe a financial planner, an estate planning attorney, somebody who does what's called estate planning, is someone you want to get to know. There are all sorts of legal documents online. People have done them. You may be in a position, if you have, a very small bank account, to use an online service where you just get this document. But be careful, right? There are a lot of legal requirements that make documents legal. And if you don't know what you're doing, you could fall into, a trap, or you just might make a mistake.
Andrea, there's a question. What age should you have a will, and what's the best way to start setting that up?
Yep. So if it were me, my advice is, as soon as you start working and you have anything that's in your own name that is of value, you have a bank account in your own name, I don't care what's in it, you get a simple will put together. And I know it sounds, it's an expense, but it's an expense I think that's worth making. You find an attorney who does estate planning, that's ESTATE, estate planning, and you hire them to make a simple will. The other two pieces that you want to ask about are a durable power of attorney for healthcare. That is going to be one of the most important things that you have, along with a basic will. And again, I'm talking a basic will because that's the bottom, that's the minimum you should have. You might have more assets than anybody else your age or other people, and need something more. A power of attorney for healthcare covers a situation in which you are unable to speak for yourself. You've gotten hit by that car and you can't speak. Somebody has to make some medical decisions for you. If you don't have this power of attorney, then people aren't going to know what it is that you want to have happen, right? Are you interested in pain medication? Are you interested in being fed through a feeding tube if that will keep you alive? Questions that sometimes are scary and seem kind of morbid as we're sitting here, you're in your 20s and early 30s, but honestly, they are conversations that once you start having with people that you trust, it's a gift to your parents, it's a gift to your siblings, it's a gift to your spouse, by telling them, if something happens to me, here's what I want. You don't have to make those decisions for me. I'm telling you. So a will and a power of attorney for healthcare. There are other documents that are often included in estate planning, but at this stage, those are the two that I say really just get them done.
And if I could interrupt two things. One, when you are young, hopefully your parents have these things set up. So usually an estate planning attorney that your parents used might give you a discount, or, kind of do it part and parcel. I've seen that with my clients. They've been able to bring their kids in because parents, after you can think that that your parents can make the decisions for you. After 18, they can't. So, it might sound, funny, they're paying your tuition, but they can't make a decision about your medical directive, right? So it's important to get one of these. And so often, parents are really happy to have their kids involved, and you can usually get that as one price from an estate planning attorney. So that's a good place to start. And the second thing I want to make mention is beneficiaries. So if you have an IRA, a 401k, many of these retirement accounts we're talking about, you can actually designate, and you in fact have to designate where you want the money to go if you were to pass away. So you could have one person, you could have multiple people, or you can have an organization. So, personally, I really love I love my grad school, I love PC, and I love my private high school that I went to. And so there are parts of my retirement accounts, just small percentages, most of it's going to go to my husband, but there are percentages there that are going to those places because I want to give back to them, and I kind of want to create lasting legacy. That will trump your will. So if you list beneficiaries, so basically if you just have a 401k, Andrea, you can tell me if you disagree, but if you just have 401k and truly no other assets, no bank accounts, this is unrealistic, no car, nothing like that, you might be able to get away with just putting beneficiaries on. but most people have other assets. So a will cover everything that doesn't get a beneficiary. But just a little plug there on beneficiaries.
And I'm going to flip the script a little bit, if that's okay. So
Yes.
one thing I would say is, I agree. The retirement assets, the beneficiaries for insurance and retirement assets, great, important. But when we saw COVID hit and we saw young people being put on ventilators too, I think that's why you need those three documents: the will, the power of attorney, and the healthcare proxy. But to flip the switch, and Maggie, I'm sure you see this too. But what's really interesting is we are finding our clients in their 20s and 30s, or the adult children of our clients in their 20s and 30s are coming to us and asking, about their parents. They want to make sure their parents have done this, because it's going to be like on the children's shoulders if they didn't prepare properly. So, did they do estate planning? If something happens to your parents, is half the money going to go to the government instead of your family and your loved ones? So I think you also want to have that family conversation if you can, and just broach the topic like, hey, it would be really great to understand what your intentions are and what you've done to plan for that, so that I can know where that is, and know that you're covered and taken care of, or help in any way we can. So I think that conversation could be super helpful.
That's huge, Kathy. And I think before I keep going on that train of thought, because I don't want to get off of that for a minute, but there are two questions. I see them in the Q&A, so please don't think I'm ignoring them. We will get to them in 1 minute. But Kathy, I think that we've talked before about your trusted circle, right? These questions that we're talking about, these issues of finances and healthcare decisions, these are questions, these are discussions you have with people you trust, people who you believe have your best interest at heart, who you can talk to. This isn't an over the coffee, somebody you just met, having a conversation with them about your healthcare decisions. You make these decisions with or inform people of these decisions if you trust them, and you don't have any obligation. Hear me on this. You do not have any obligation to tell anybody any of your business. Your mother may be your best friend, but you don't want her to know certain things. You don't have to tell your mother everything, right? Your trusted circle is going to be different maybe than somebody else's, and that's okay. Just make sure you have a circle and that somebody knows where your documents are and what your wishes are. And trust me, that will give you peace of mind, and it will give other people peace of mind too, right? Do you guys have anything to add to that?
Nope.
Okay, we have two questions that are sort of related. So let me read them both, and then maybe one or both of you can take them. So how do you strategize planning for financial goals that are more midterm length, such as saving for a house or a wedding? Ooh, congratulations if that's you. And where should you be putting that money? And then the second question is, do you have any financial advice for purchasing your first home?
I could start. So I think timeline's important. If your wedding is less than a year from now, put that into a liquid or easily accessible, is the word really, account, right? So that's usually your savings account, maybe a high yield savings account. So those are accounts that give you a little bit more return on your money, but they're still FDIC insured. They still protect your principal or the money that you've put in. If your timeline is greater than a year, you could think about investing it. I probably wouldn't put it in all stock. I would do a mix of stocks and bonds in case you need the money, sooner. And then of course, if it's a long-term, let's say a house, it might be 5, 6, 7 years from now. Yeah, you could invest that money because you have some time for it to grow. The reason we say time is important, time horizon, is because we can't predict what the markets are going to do, right? What if you invested in December and January was a very ugly market, and then you lost 7% of your money in January and you needed the money in February? You have to take it out at a 7% loss. But as I sort of mentioned, you can see that the money over time will hopefully grow. And so the longer your time horizon is, the longer you'll have time to get that money to come back if there is a market correction. And so actually, for most people, buying a home is many years away. So I actually think a systematic monthly investment at your risk tolerance is a really great way to get some additional growth to help with that down payment. Kathy, do you have any thoughts there?
I think that's great advice. I do think that purchasing a home is usually a long-term, you want to save for it, you want to put money away for it, so you can invest and have it grow. And again, the markets will go up and down. And as you get closer to your goal, you want to start moving some of that money out of the more volatile assets and more into the conservative assets, the conservative investments. But just like your dollar costing into the markets, you can start moving money and shifting it maybe a year and a half out from your goal, so that in case there is volatility when you're ready to make that purchase, you don't get affected by it.
And I think one thing we haven't talked about yet is a credit score. So again, I think I have that on the screen now, the FICO score. That's important for buying a house, right? Know your credit score, log in now and log in at least once a year and check your credit report. There can be things that are wrong on there and you want to dispute it before you're buying a home. And you can dispute it. You dispute it in writing. And you might have to produce some information, but usually you can, if it's not yours, get it wiped off your credit score. And so what makes up a credit score? You can see that here, 30% is the accounts you owe, the amounts owed. So how much credit have you taken out? The greater it is, it's going to hurt your credit score a little bit, right? The less amount you have on your credit cards, for example, the better your credit score will be. Your payment history is 35%. So you can see 65% are just these two categories, but 35% is payments history. Make your payments on time and automate them. Automate them. What a shame to have your credit score be a hit because you were a couple of days late on a payment, right? You can automate that. The other parts are new credit. So have you taken out new credit recently? That can temporarily ding your credit score. It usually comes back up pretty quickly. Length of credit history. This is a really important one. So, there's a difference between good debt and bad debt. I would say good debt is longer term wealth building debt. So your student loans might not feel like good debt, but they are because they're showing that you can make payments on time. They're showing that you have credit history, and it's debt for your education so that you can have a better job, right? There's many jobs you can't get without college. Mortgage, another way of building wealth, right? You're putting money into a home, building equity, and hopefully selling it and getting some of that money back or more, right? Bad debt, quote unquote, would be credit card debt to an extent. Now, I think credit cards are a great way to get free stuff. If you get a credit card that has points and you pay it off every month on time, you're building your credit history, you're building your payment history, and you can get points, and that usually can buy you a trip or a plane ticket or something like that. So, but carrying very long-term credit card debt, so not making those payments every month, may mean that you're living beyond your means. And frankly, those interest rates are in the 20s, 20%, 22%. So you're getting charged a lot of interest by not making those payments on time. But let's say you've paid off your credit card and you're like, I never want to see credit again, and I'm going to cancel my card. Well, that actually can impact your length of credit history. So what I suggest is not closing your card even once it's paid off, but just snipping that card in half so you're not tempted to use it, but don't close it, because length of credit history is important. And of course, credit mix. So do you have a car loan, a student loan, and a credit card debt? Those are three different types of credit. And that's going to help your score too. So diversifying your credit mix. So, that's another piece about buying your home. Check your score now, understand what it is. The higher your credit score is, the better interest rate on your mortgage you're likely going to receive, or the more money the bank is going to be willing to lend you. And if you're thinking of buying a home with your partner, have that conversation with your partner. I don't know if I'm dating myself with this show, but How I Met Your Mother was a show I love to watch. And there's a great scene where Lily and Marshall try to buy a home, and Lily never tells Marshall that her credit is awful. And they find that out at the bank when they're applying for a home. So don't do what they did. Talk about it ahead of time.
So, Kathy, there's a question that says, are the credit scores in Mint and similar apps and banking apps good enough to reference, or should I go through my FICO directly to check?
I usually go to Expedia. I think there's 3 big credit bureaus. Those are the ones that are most accurate. Mint or your credit card, I have found, are off. Not Expedia, that's the travel agency. My annual credit
Experian.
report. Thank you, Experian, and it's myannualcreditreport.com and they'll give you the 3 big ones: Experian, Equifax, and TransUnion.
And think about it this way too, like that was a great overview, Maggie. Your credit score goes up like an escalator. I know this is a different analogy, but it goes up like an escalator. It takes a long time to build. I'm so sorry. That would be my PC student from, oh, that's not, oh yeah, my PC student. I will call her back. Okay, so credit score goes up like a escalator, and it comes down like an elevator. So if you mess up your credit score, it goes down really fast and hard, and it's hard to make that up. It takes a lot of time to build that up. So what I would encourage you is to really pay attention to it. I call your credit score your financial DNA. This is your like financial genes, right? We all want good genes. We want good, skin and good hair and all this stuff. Make sure your financial DNA is good too. So it follows you around, and you have to pay more for things. You have to pay more in interest if you have bad credit scores, just like Maggie said. So it's easy to have a clean score. We all start out with a clean slate, and just try your best to keep it up and automate so that you don't miss payments. That, I think, is probably the biggest reason why credit scores go down, is because we forget to make a payment. So that would be
I included the link in the Q&A for everybody, annualcreditreport.com.
We have 4 minutes left. If anybody has questions, please put them in the Q&A. I want to just end with one last little piece that is my one of my favorites. And it's philanthropy. And so philanthropy is something that makes me feel really good. And I think it's as good for your physical and mental health as anything else. Some people go for a long run, and I think that feeling you get after you've taken a really long run is the same kind of feeling I get when I've given the money to a charity or an event or something that I believe in, and I'm supporting them. So in that budget conversation that you have, or as you're considering what you do with your money, who are the organizations? What are the organizations or the ministries or the charities that you feel passionate about? Where did you, when you look back on your life, was there your college, Providence College? How much did you get out of that college? And what does that mean to you, right? So April 6th is Friars Give. I'm going to put in a plug for Friars Give. But as you start building your philanthropy, you're building your own wealth, and now you're giving away some, and you're paying forward all of the benefits that you've had that got you to where you are today and where you will be tomorrow and where you're going in the future. And so that really is something I think is good for a financial plan to have included. So I guess I challenge everybody on this call today, pay attention to the things that you support, the things that you're passionate about, whether it's a church or animal shelter. I would love to see everybody here make some contribution on Friars Give Day. Give back to Providence College. Maybe you give your graduation year or whatever year it is. So 2022, get $20.22. Give it to Friars Give if that's all you can do. Go ahead, Kath.
I'll say that I graduated in 1987, so I've been around the block a few times. Financial education has always been important to me. Providence College made a huge impact on me and in my life. And over the last couple of years, I decided to give back to Providence in a different way. So I donate a subscription to Barron's, which is a financial education newspaper, to all of the students in the business school. And it just makes me so happy to know that something that's really important to me, which is financial education, now is available to all of our students. And hopefully it makes them more competitive and more aware as they go out into, you know, the world. So that's one example. You can gift stock, you can write a check, you know, there's so many things you can do. And the last thing I just want to make sure I say today particularly to this group, keep talking about money. Normalize conversations about money. Find out, you know, ask questions of your friends. What was your best financial move? What was your worst one? What does money mean to you? You know, just talk about money. What, you know, are you working? What's your salary? It's okay to do that. And I think the more we talk about it, the more we'll feel comfortable and build a healthy relationship with our money and build strong financial wellness for ourselves.
And if I could plug myself, but I think it would be helpful that it's perfectly in line with what Kathy said. We have created an Instagram account. It's just at Jondro, like my last name, Wealth. So Jondro Wealth. And it's pretty much all education based. So it's a good place to start. There's also some great books. I posted some of those too. You know, look at that. And if you have any questions, always message me or anyone on this call. But that's a good place to start. I mean, very basic financial questions are on there, and hopefully you could educate through that as well. So that's one place to look at. I love Elvest. That's the other one I mentioned. They're Robo-Advisor, but they have a great Instagram account. And then I would also say, I Will Teach You to Be Rich was probably one of the first books that I read by Rami Sethi, Sethi. I think it's a great place. It's a really easy read, great on audiobook too. It's a great place to start too. So I agree, keep talking about it, keep educating yourself on this, because you can do it. Truly, it's not rocket science.
Jondro Wealth Management, follow them. I just did.
I have to make you a guest speaker.
1 minute after 7. I think you are fantastic. You know that. Thank you so much. Everybody on the call, there's a survey. I think it was posted. The link is posted in the chat, and you'll be getting it in your email. Please do fill it out. Be honest, because we use your comments to make our programs better for the next year. So please, our information is on the screen here. You will get a recording, so you will always be able to go back and find us. Thank you so much for coming tonight. Thank you, Maggie and Kathy, and go Friars. Next time we're going to beat Villanova. All right.
Yes.
Hey, guys.